So as you know, we're releasing our album Early Light on March 1st. So last week we had an interview with our friend Kenichi Ikuno, and today's video is an interview with our friend Rosalie Burrell, who wrote two of the pieces on the album and also wrote Early Light, which the album is named for.
She was very hesitant to give this interview. We had her over for dinner, and when we brought it up that we wanted to do a little interview, she would rather do the dishes than do this. But we finally got her.
We cajoled her into it. So we weren't quite organized enough to have ourselves actually in the shot with Rose, so...
It was hard enough to get her to give the interview.
So we're asking the questions and she's answering them. So Rose, what is your favorite color?
Green. I don't know, all good things are green. The forest, vegetables.
What is your favorite food?
You start to eat a food and then you become obsessed with it and then it's all you can think about. So right now I'm really into, this sounds like a fake answer, but kale. It's like all I can think about. I want kale sauteed with garlic and chili flakes and salt, like boatloads of salt.
What do you think of Stravinsky?
I love Stravinsky. He's actually my desert island composer. It's endless. I mean, I know it's dance music, so it should be endless anyway, but it's like every time you get to a new little pocket of Rite of Spring, for instance, you're like, oh my God, I forgot about this part.
Tell us about your special orchid.
There's an orchid that's doing very well right now. This is the lineage as I understand it. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Kenichi's father gave it to him. Kenichi took care of it in New York, another composer and collaborator of aTonalHits. He gave the orchid to you guys when he moved away. And then when you guys moved, and you took care of it for several years. I think it was doing well. I even plant sat it a couple of times, I think, like many years ago. And then he moved into this new building, and there's not as much light here. And they're fickle creatures. So last year I took it home on the subway from Brooklyn to the Bronx.
Now tell us a little bit more about Io Parto.
It's Italian. It means I am leaving, Io Parto. And it's a piece of text that was set many times in, I don't know, the Renaissance periods. Mostly choral work. It's actually sort of a piece that it's a piece of poetry that I sort of labeled on the piece, and then the longer that I looked at it, the more it felt like the music that I was writing. The piece that I wrote is textless. It's just violin, piano. So this actually never appears at all, but it's a piece is ephemeral in a way. It's fleeting, it's leaving.
What is Early Light?
When I was writing Early Light, I was obsessed at the time, and actually several years later I still am, with the sound world of 15th, 16th century Europe. And not just the music that was being written at the time, although that is definitely a large part of it, but the rest of the sound world, like the birds, the fact that there was like stone and wood and maybe people singing somewhere in the other room, that all of these sounds were converging, and that simultaneously the atmosphere would have been different than what I'm living in now. Probably not as polluted, for instance. I think that you would have seen it differently. And the way that light filtered into a room and the way that sound filtered into a room, especially in these sacred settings. I'm completely obsessed with music in the church and in those sacred settings.
If you're stuck in a boring dinner and you're trying to get a conversation going, what is the question you ask?
Well, my favorite thing to talk about, and it's also perfect in a dinner party, because all I want to do is talk about literature. I want to know what other people are reading. I want to get a strong recommendation, if possible. I want somebody to say, like, oh, this book will knock you over the head. Prepare for your life to be turned upside down. That's what I want. I don't think there's anything better in the world than being completely demolished by a book.
What are you reading right now?
I'm reading Middlesex by Jeffrey Eugenides. Probably saying it incorrectly. I think he's Greek-American. And it's incredible. It's about genealogy and the immigrant experience, also sexuality, and the narrator is a hermaphrodite. But we're finding this out over like a family history of many generations, and travel and trauma and how that reflects in the family. But it's beautifully written. I cannot put it down, and it's very long. So luckily, I cannot put it down, and there's still more to go. So excited for this album. Please listen.